So I'm super happy for all of you who could join us, and for all of those who couldn't. You can watch this later on as a recording on Airtime's YouTube channel. About myself, my name is Akos. I'm the CEO of Airtime. Airtime is a real-time user research engagement platform, and we help product teams to capture users in real time based on their behavior and product data in their application to gather feedback. Now, we run regularly webinars with guest speakers and opinion leaders like Timothy, and I'm very glad, Timothy, to have you here with us today and inspire us with your learnings that you gathered from working with dozens of product teams across the globe. So with that, and without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, and please take it from here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Akash. I'm very happy about the opportunity. I want to talk about alignment, and I think alignment is a real superpower in terms of structuring your product teams and enabling them and empowering them to do good product work. And there are two sections of this talk. The first one is obviously I will tell you a bit about my experience, and I brought a real world example. And the second is we have lots of time for a Q&A session where you can, just ask whatever troubles you and share your experiences. I would be super eager to learn more about how you approach alignment and what your experiences are. So yeah, I want to take away my key learning for today in advance, so we can refer back to it at any time. And I think what my key learning is over the past few months and years is that if you have a good leading metric with which you actually measure the real behavior of your users, that can be a real superpower for empowering a product team. And I will dive deeper later on about, especially what a leading metric is. But for now, this is what I think will my talk will point to. Just to for you to know who's talking here. My name is Timothy. I founded my own prop tech startup in early 2017. We got acquired in late 2018. I learned about a lot about especially what not to do, and I switched to consulting later on, where I found that much of the corporates that we worked with, they had the very same problems like we did as first-time founders, especially overcommitting on delivery in a product stage or in a stage of the life cycle of the product where actually delivery is not the main problem. And on the side, because there were some very interesting consulting gigs in this sort of space where we developed the MVP and stuff, I experimented a lot with launching things. I experimented a lot with prototyping and fake door MVPs and everything. And I coached a lot of startups here at the local accelerator, in which we were also part in the past. And so I launched or coached the launches of more than 25 products over the last 1.5 years. And now I try to share the learnings I got along the way as a product coach and a consultant for startups and enterprises. And I don't know, over the recent month, I learned about myself that I kind of got to know which shortcuts to take on the way to launching something, and the tech decisions which are sensible to speed up development and bring something to market, bring the product vision to market, and get feedback from the market within just a few days. So this is my claim for today. If you have an idea today and you want to launch something like an NXP the day after tomorrow, or just a couple days from now, then hit me up. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best channel to reach me. So without further ado, let's cover the first section. Why does alignment matter in the first place? And I brought a more or less real example. This is a real customer scenario. I just changed it a bit for preserving the customer privacy. And it was a medium-sized company. They implemented Scrum in the past, some other agile methodology. They implemented OKRs. They They also thought about implementing flight levels. So there was this terminology floating around. And they were an enterprise B2B CRM software company. They had multiple products, but there was this one main product, which was basically their cash cow. And this main product came in two flavors. They had this legacy version, the legacy client, which was an on-prem solution, and they had this new client, this new software version, which was running entirely in the cloud. And for this main product, they had a strategic product management in place. They had something called a product trio, where they had UX, UI, software development, and product management expertise. And this product was done by 15 different product teams. And each of those product teams, they had their own PO, they had their own UI, UX people, and also their development people. They also, within the organization, especially for this product, had fixed budgets. They had 1-year roadmaps, which they came up with, I don't know, late in the year for the next year. They had multiple objectives and strategic goals. And something which was really important is they had sales, which was incentivized to close or renew customers, which created lots of pressure for the product teams. There were lots of conflicting incentives overall. They had their roadmaps versus their sales versus the research they did. They had their conflicting goals, key results versus the short-term features that they wanted to build, and all those different strategic initiatives. At first sight, this seems quite messy, but I think it's very typical for this type of organization, especially for this organization size. I think there are three main things which make alignment hard in this case. The first one is that the way they were structured, they created those confined sets of knowledge. The delivery teams were feature factories, or they were considered to be feature factories, and therefore were cut off from all the knowledge about why they would do things, how their work impacted business value and customer value. And also, which was pretty problematic, they had the product responsibility split over 15 different teams. So there was no one product team which could do anything end to end and ship anything end to end. There were lots of dependencies between the product teams to actually get some meaningful work done. And also, as mentioned earlier, they had their conflicting incentives, especially the short-term closing and the working on the long-term strategy. And what can alignment actually do in such a case? I think there are two main things. First of all, good alignment lays the groundwork for the why. So what it does is it moves the decision-making process of what we're building, of the what, more towards the people closest to the customer. So this, in the end, empowers the team to create customer value, while also always knowing why they do the things and how their work and what they're building, the features they decide to build, or the products they pursue, how this drives value of the business. So in short, what good alignment does is it increases effectiveness. Therefore, it reduces waste. Which brings us to section number 2, which is how can we actually foster alignment? How can we set our product teams up to create alignment or to create better alignment? And of course, there's no snake oil. There are a lot of frameworks floating around, and usually there's this imperative of just taking framework X, applying it into the company, and then solving all the problems, which is never the case. Still, I think there's a very useful framework right now, which is Teresa Torres' opportunity solution trees. And at least for me, this provided a very good mental model of how we can make alignment much better inside of a company. So I will, first of all, just give you a rundown of what Teresa Torres proposes and how opportunity solution trees work. And then try to derive the underlying principles and mechanics so that you're able to implement them inside of your company. What she says is, first of all, you want to have a business outcome. I will go on go about more into detail what an outcome actually is later on. But for example, increasing 90-day retention could be a good business outcome, which is actually one of her examples. And then what you want to do is derive a product outcome out of this business outcome. The product outcome is supposed to actually measure user behavior, which you can measure today and which will have an impact on the business outcome. So the business outcome is something, a success indicator, which you can't really measure right now if you do something. And the product outcome is something that if you change anything in the product, you will see an impact on your product outcome tomorrow. And this could be, for example, increasing viewing minutes. That's actual user behavior. They spend. The example that you provided was a streaming service where you can watch movies or TV shows. And if you increase viewing minutes, then it seems like, or the rationale is that your users are getting a lot of value out of the content you have inside of your app or the way you present your app, that the probability that they will churn within the next 90 months is reduced. That's the rationale here. And so Teresa Torres then says that for this specific product outcome, there are pains, needs, and desires, which she calls opportunities. And those are opportunities that if we solve them, if we solve those problems, then this will then lead this will then have a positive impact on the product outcome. And one of those opportunities, one of those pain points could be probably something like, I can't find anything to watch. And this makes sense in a way, because if, I don't know, people are finished with their favorite TV show and they don't have anything top of mind that they can watch right now, then this will probably increase the probability of them not spending lots of time inside of your app. And this will thus lead to maybe them not getting enough value out of your app and churning. And that's the connection there. And this, if you have this opportunity in place, of course, there's an infinite amount of solutions that you could implement inside of the solution space that will solve this opportunity in a different way. And you can experiment with those and then measure their impact. So, for example, if you had a social component inside of this streaming service, you could maybe provide the user with suggestions of what their friends have watched recently or are currently watching, because then they would have something they could watch. So there are three things to take away here. First of all, what I find very valuable in fostering alignment is having some sort of tree to visualize it. So you have those, connections between the business outcome, product outcome, opportunities, and stuff. Because this always connects our solutions way down here at the bottom of our tree with the business outcome, the why, and always provides this kind of transparency. And it also makes those connections itself transparent. Those connections, they are hypotheses with a certain confidence. So that increasing viewing minutes may have an impact on our 90-day retention, but it also may not. And there's just one way to find out by, trying to solve the problems underlying underlying this product outcome, and then actually measuring the impact. So having in mind that these connections are hypotheses actually very, very valuable. And then you want to focus on just one current branch to work on, to not be drawn into a lot of different initiatives, and really focus on driving customer and business value. So what's an outcome? I've talked a lot about outcomes right now, and I want to break it down real quick. First of all, let's talk about what alignment actually is. And usually I think alignment is tied to goals and metrics in a lot of cases and in a lot of organizations. And maybe Akos or maybe someone in the audience can talk a bit about what kind of metrics come to mind when you think about measuring success and measuring progress.
So I'm going to throw in here a couple of thoughts, and everyone in the audience. Actually, this is a chance for you to share goals and metrics that you have. I see someone already commented, like a number of leads, revenue. One of the from my side, what we use as a key metric is related to product usage. So in Airtime's example, like how many impressions did we have of the pop-up, the recruitment pop-up for our clients, and how many sessions actually materialized from there, because those are the things that measure the value that our users see in the end, like that they get like quickly users that they can talk to. I see leads and the number of leads generated and revenue in the comment side. I'll hand it back to you, Timothy, here.
Yeah, great. Of course, yeah, revenue is very, your straightforward metric, right? So, I've come up with in preparation for the session. I've just come up with a couple of those. Revenue would obviously have a fit in there. Number of leads generated also. Sometimes you come across stuff like a North Star metric. Maybe you've heard about that. There are outcomes. There are outputs. There are objectives and key results if you come from an OKR background. There are, of course, the classic SMART goals. There are leading indicators and lagging indicators. And what's the underlying principle here? I think of what you try to achieve with those kind of metrics is you try to articulate or measure what you think is good for the business in the medium and long term. So what creates business value? And by sharing this way of measuring business value, we hope to align everyone towards those goals. Because if everyone just sees this is what we're measuring, everybody automatically will just do stuff that's geared towards this kind of goal and actually has a positive impact on that. And the different metrics usually just are different approaches for that. So, for example, what's the rationale behind a North Star metric? We're trying to. This implies a question of what should everyone inside of the company focus on. You have this North Star where everybody can gaze upon. And you have outputs, which imply the question of what do we need to deliver. And you have objectives, which in the OKR language implies a question of what's the desired state in the next at the end of the next tertial. So what's the desired state 4 months from now? And those kind of metrics, like for example revenue or even number of leads generated, they can be quite big. So monthly active users, revenue, retention. You can do a lot of stuff today and do a lot of stuff tomorrow and not pushing the needle into any direction, for the next half year or so. And so the challenge here is to operationalize it and make it smaller, and start measuring progress today in a way. And to make this a bit more, understandable, a bit more figurative, I brought a little example. So imagine you are the manager of a furniture company and you run a local furniture store. You measure your store's monthly success and the progress of your store by calculating revenue at the end of each month or the start of the next month. And my question is, how do you know during the month that what you do increases your success metrics? Do you have any idea, Akash? How do you do it at Airtime?
How we measure during the month?
Yeah, exactly. How do you start measuring measuring success? Or how would you approach this example here?
Well, I have I'm gonna put them in the leading indicator category. So things that I can measure that indicate that someone will become a client of ours down the road. We're in B2B, so conversion, it's not instantaneous, but typically across multiple touch points. So like my focus is on these leading type of indicators.
Yeah, great. Um, and I think, what I came up with for this specific example is that, for example, you can start measuring each day stuff like the amount of people coming into the store, or the amount of people who took a brochure with them, or maybe the average duration of the store visit. And there's a rationale behind each of those metrics. They are, of course, leading indicators. And if there are a lot of people coming to the store and there's a specific, constant probability of them buying something, or each customer buying something, then increasing the number will probably lead to more sales. Of course, as mentioned earlier, this is a hypothesis. And this opens up this solution space because, for example, I don't know, you could maybe rent a food truck or something, put it inside of the store, and give free hot dogs to everyone who comes into your store. And this will help you increase the amount of people coming to the store, because everybody likes free hot dogs, right? But maybe it's not the best connection towards your success indicator, because those people are probably just coming for the hot dogs and not coming for buying furniture anymore. So this is just something to keep in mind, that the connection between this leading indicator and the more lagging indicator is usually a hypothesis. But if we start measuring this specific customer behavior today, that we are confident drive our main goal, then that's a pretty good system, or you can put in place a pretty good system for fast experimentation and feedback that opens up the solution space, because we can always start measuring today. And yeah, again, keep in mind that those connections, they are assumptions, and we need to test those assumptions. What's the underlying principle here? First of all, I think it's very important to come up with a meaningful lagging indicator and reducing the amount of lagging indicators that you want to try to measure. And then out of this lagging indicator, you want to derive a leading indicator. And then having a leading indicator in place, this opens up the solution space to really brainstorm based on the research, based on the challenges the customers face, what a good solution to this might be, and then start measuring, experimenting with the solutions, maybe implementing them, and measure the impact on the leading and maybe even the lagging indicator, and then probably start to adapt. And what's also very helpful is to start visualizing those connections in trees. This usually, like mentioned before, increases transparency and increases focus, and also have a single branch or a single one of those systems in place that you focus for a longer period of time. And how can we put this into practice? Because this was very theoretical up until now. And I want to give a disclaimer, first of all. I want to get back to the initial example of the CRM company from before, and I want to explain what we did together. And what you will see is that there's this huge difference between what the frameworks provide and what the theory says, and the reality in the organizations. And usually when you start working on alignment, there's a lot of change involved, which you have to manage. It's just really, really hard, and getting alignment right is a huge struggle. And you will see that we also in our coaching did a lot of compromise and weren't always, doing stuff by the book, which was totally okay. And so, yeah, just to recap, we had this enterprise B2B CRM software company. They tried a lot of frameworks. They had this one cash cow product with 15 teams, and a strategic product management in place. We started out with Tara's terminology and her framework for guidance, because we had the experience, or I made the experience that providing some guidance and providing some shared terminology usually helps people to read up on the matter, to read something on the internet, and to talk about the same things basically, and create this shared vocabulary. And then you can always deviate later on and take the bits and pieces that work for the specific organization, but having this shared thing, this shared mental model usually helps a lot. So that's why we actually came around the corner with a certain framework, even though we knew that frameworks are sometimes very theoretical. And they had their strategic initiatives and goals in the form of OKRs. For example, in this case, they had 6 OKR sets on the company level, and then a lot more of them down the hierarchy. And I brought you 2 examples of key results they had. The first one was POs spent 40% of their time in customer interviews, which is very inputty. We just have to do this and have full control over more or less full control of reaching those. And then the next key result was cloud client migrations increased from 20% to 22%, and which is very outcomey. And of course, we couldn't fix all of the alignment issues within the organization. So what we focused on very early on was enabling the teams that we coach to make better product decisions and to start empowering them and asking the right questions within the company. And the first thing we did was we tried to derive a business outcome. And what they wanted to achieve was reduce operational costs. And thus they wanted to migrate more users or shift larger parts of the user base to the cloud. So from the on-premise, from the legacy application, which was on-premise, more to the newer one, which was in the cloud, to save on maintenance and stuff and support. And this was the rationale was to increase long-term profitability. And there was a lot of discussions going on within the product team, between strategic product management and also within leadership, and they came up with the outcome: increased cloud migrations for the primary CRM product. And this was already very valuable to have this kind of outcome in place, because this discussion weeded out all the weird goals and metrics. Having a better methodology on what business value actually means and how we can start measuring business value was already providing lots of value for this kind of making alignment better process. And this also enabled the team to question every new feature idea or every requirement that came from sales or support in regards of the connection to this. So they were able to ask, okay, I understand that this feature might help close this customer in the short term, but how does it help with our overall outcome with which we know or with which we want to drive business value? And if this is in line with each other, then great. Then we can probably put it into the backlog near term. And if it doesn't, then we can at least have a discussion about it. The next step was, and this was much harder, to come up with a good leading indicator for increasing cloud migrations. And there were a lot of different aspects to consider. First of all, they had quite long sales cycles. So for the specific matter at hand, they needed to convince the on-prem customers of migrating to the cloud. And also conversions were usually happening in batches. So if you close a customer, if you persuade a customer to abandon their on-prem solution and move to the cloud, then you usually have a lot of customers coming in, and a huge batch of customers coming in, or a huge batch of users coming in. And also, which was potentially problematic, that there was no real indication of future behavior within the application for the migration taking place in the near future. And also the behavior of the users which have actually migrated, their behavior was only partly relevant for closing, for doing the migrations, and because those users have already migrated. And on the positive side of things, they had a fairly large user base, which enabled them to measure quantitatively the impact of all their product features. So what we did was, and this is not really this is a bit off of the usual playbook. We worked our way both down and up to come to this product outcome. Because they had this existing research body, and we also conducted some user research together with them, which indicated that the onboarding process and the productivity losses that they anticipated were their main concerns, were the main issues for both the to migrate customers and also the recently migrated users. So there were users which said, I don't find my way around the software. I can't really do the stuff the same way I did before. So there was this kind of issue. And in the end, we came up with the hypothesis, and it was a hypothesis, that the satisfaction with the product shortly after the users migrated, that would foster sales of cloud licenses in the short to medium term. Because the thought behind that was that if we can prove to customers which are on the brink of migrating or which we want to migrate, then if you can prove to them that there's no loss in productivity and users themselves are very satisfied with the onboarding process and how stuff translate from the old software to the new software, or that there's a lot of help there, that would actually help us with cloud migrations. But again, this connection is just a hypothesis, and it needed to be tested out. So why did this work lead to more empowered product teams? First of all, this opened up the solution space by focusing the user research on the onboarding process. So what was currently painful, which needs and desires were unfulfilled. We were able to generate a lot of matching ideas and start conducting small tests and measure the progress. Measure progress in terms of business outcome, product outcome. It also moved the ownership of the solution space more towards the team. Incoming requests, as I mentioned earlier, had to stand this test of, does this feature request, does this inquiry actually affect satisfaction after migration positively? If it does, cool, we can probably implement this or prioritize this somewhere in our backlog. If no, then we need to really try to figure out how to handle it. And also it provided a way to see the progress on a daily basis. So what's the impact of our latest release on this kind of metric? And in the end led to a more sensible split between the strategic product management, which was then able to centralize or focus on centralizing and communicating user research and monitor the progress. And the product teams were able to focus more on the ideation, testing, and implementation kind of things. And there was this natural handover. So this didn't solve all the problems within the organization, but we achieved significant progress. So there was still some short-term requests and still a lot of pressure from sales to close specific customers that didn't really align with the outcome. But this better alignment enabled fruitful discussions on prioritizations because it made transparent the deviation of the goal, which was really important here. And this did also not eradicate all of the goal and metric mess within the organization, but it made those colliding incentives much more obvious. Because you had this tree structure where you can always figure out on which side of the tree you currently are on. So to recap, there are three takeaways here, or three main principles. First of all, focusing on one lagging indicator is really valuable because it enables teams to question the priority of everything else. So if there's a mismatch, we can discuss. If there's no mismatch, perfect. Second, start measuring customer behavior. So by measuring today, the leading indicator, what may lead to success tomorrow, this shortens the feedback loop significantly. And then third, visualize in trees. Also super helpful because trees foster the sense of, having this shared goal and make all those deviations transparent. Which brings us back to our key learning from the beginning, I think having this leading metric that actually measures user behavior really enables the team, or really can be a superpower to empowering a product team.